it can be, the law can be used to stop rallies, because you don't define what is the security zone, right? So it can be as small as the area around Dataran Merdeka, right? It can be as big as an entire state, as what was done in 64 in Sarawak, in 77 in Kelantan. YB Lim Kit Siang has made the point, which I think other people have also made, that you can take over a whole state now. So you basically can commandeer all the public services and government entities in Selangor, in Penang, whatever, under this law. So you can do anything. And if you think about the public rallies, I mean, in Bersih 3, there was the police managed to get a court order banning people from gathering around Dataran Merdeka. That was ultimately reversed by the courts. Okay, so although on that day itself it was effective, on appeal it was reversed by the courts. Sorry, I think that was Bersih 2. In Bersih 3, they declared Bersih an illegal organization. That was also overturned by the courts. In Bersih 4, they banned the T-shirts, and that's been challenged. And I'm supremely confident that it will be overturned by the courts. So it only goes to illustrate the point that I was making, that the courts sometimes do make decisions which end up frustrating the executive. And so one of the ways in which you can avoid all these problems is to have this bill where basically there's not going to be any reference to the courts, and you can just proceed. Somebody talked about when was the last time the Senate or the Yang Tuan Agong refused consent? Well, as far as I know, the Senate has never voted against a bill. And if you look at today's composition, Senate is supposed to be maximum of 70 members. I think currently there are 4 vacancies, I think 66 members, if the facts bear me out. 6 are from the 3 opposition states, because they get to send 2 members each, right? And then, of course, there are others that are appointed directly by the Yang Tuan Agong on the advice of the Prime Minister. And unlike the Westminster system in the UK, in Australia, elsewhere, when the government wants to appoint senators, they also go to the opposition and they say, how many senators do you need? And we'll appoint them, because they believe in a 2-party system. We, unfortunately, a bit lacking in that regard. But in terms of withholding consent, as Prof. Bari has said, there was a time when there was the fear that consent would be withheld, and that was why Article 66 of the Constitution was changed in 83, 84, just before a particular sultan from a particular southern state was about to become Agong. They were a bit worried that he might try to, barter with the government on approving bills, and so Dr. Martin changed the Constitution to basically say, if the Yang Tuan Agong doesn't consent to a bill within 30 days, at the end of those 30 days, it will be deemed to be consented. So you don't need the consent of the Yang Tuan Agong. So, as you can see, there have been times when the government has taken action against the institution of the monarchy. And sometimes you do need, I think, to be fair, sometimes you do need unelected people to be some sort of a check and balance on an elected body. So, for example, the judiciary playing its proper role. It's not an elected body, it's appointed. But once they are there, they have security of tenure. And the reason for giving them security of tenure is that so that if they ever were to make a decision to overturn a piece of legislation for being unconstitutional, right, there should not be a way in which the government can victimize the judiciary for having done that. That's the whole process of check and balance. So, while generally speaking, I agree we should not place our hopes on unelected institutions, there are times in the constitutional construct where that is precisely the point. That's how you actually get a proper system of checks and balances which which ought not to be able to be eroded, but unfortunately, we still managed to do a bit of that. Just before that, Dr. Ambika talked about laying before Parliament. That's literally it. It's just laid in the audit at the table of the clerk of the House. It doesn't have to be voted upon. So it's just, I inform you that I declared a state of security zone in this particular, that's all. Okay, so it's got nothing to do with voting. That's what laid before Parliament means. You basically inform Parliament. The one thing, we talked a little bit about unelected bodies like the Senate, and this perhaps is slightly off topic, but I think we all need to bear in mind, even if tomorrow there were to be a change in government, right, and the opposition were to take over, the Senate remains. The Senate remains. And remember, senators are appointed for a term of 3 years. Right? So, on a worst case scenario, right, you have to perhaps wait 3 years before legislation that passes the Dewan Rakyat will actually pass the Dewan Negara. Because for as long as the people who were appointed by the previous government are still in office, they can still vote down all your legislation. There is no law that allows the lower house to revoke the appointment of the senators. So you're going to be stuck for a maximum of 3 years. So if, I know people will tell you, the solution to this is change the government here. That may well be a solution, but please don't blame the new government when they come and tell you our legislative program is stuck in the Senate, because that will be the consequence of the fact that we've got the majority of the senators appointed by the present government, and they can still do a lot of damage until the 3 years ends, and then replacements are appointed. That's all I want to tell you. I'm sure there will be a lot of activities between now to try and persuade senators and persuade the Conference of Rulers perhaps to try and see what influence they can bring to bear on the government to retract the bill or choose not to proceed with it. Of course, if in the worst case scenario the bill is passed and it does become law, then ultimately when it is used for the first time, it will give rise to the possibility of constitutional challenge to that legislation, and then we'll have to see what happens then. I mean, some people will be cynical and say, when have constitutional challenges worked? But I'm still reasonably optimistic that we can point out that this particular piece of legislation is so comprehensively flawed from a constitutional perspective that there is no way that it should be allowed to continue in this country. And then just in closing, the question from the young lady. The TPPA, I think, it's not going to be necessarily affected by this bill at all, because if the government decides to push ahead with the TPPA, that's the prerogative in a sense of the executive. What they have done is that they promised that there will be a debate and a vote in Parliament. I hope that they will honour that, but even then the numbers could well be on their side. Although on the TPPA, what is clear is that there are deep divisions even within the government about whether they should support this. The government has tried very hard to say things like, the Bumiputra agenda is going to be protected, it's been carved out, and things like that. But you have to really look at the agreement itself. And I know there are several groups looking at the agreement. It's 5,000 pages, so plus. With all the annexes and all the bits added things. So it's a long piece of work, very detailed. There are some good things, there are quite a lot of perhaps negative things, so we've got to balance what is the good, what is the bad, and then eventually come out. But it's interesting, if the bill comes into force, of course, if Banta TPPA try to have a huge rally to march on Parliament to say that they don't want it, the bill can be used, the law, if it's already in force, can be used to say we declare, the surroundings of Parliament to be a security zone, and then thereby, or curfew, and therefore, preventing people from gathering, even perhaps making it tough for even MPs to get into the Dewan Rakyat because you have to pass through the security checkpoints. If the bar were to be very actively involved, they may declare Lepo Pasar Besar to be a safety zone, and none of us can get to the bar council. The secretariat cannot function. I mean, there are ways in which this law can be abused to frustrate the will of the people and the actions of well-intended civil society. So that's, as I said, ultimately I think that underscores that this is the problem with the legislation. It gives far too much power to one man. And we should not allow for that. In fact, no democratic country should allow for that. And even the MPs, whether in government or outside government, should realize that they should never ever give any one person so much power, because it will, the saying that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And I think there is no more true instance of that happening than today with this piece of legislation. Thank you.